If you haven't heard, today's a game changer in the war in Ukraine. Not many people have been taking it seriously, but Putin is now saying that one missile will trigger hundreds of warheads and stark message on nuclear deterrence. He's also talking about changing Russia's nuclear doctrine. Back in October, the Pentagon did say they wouldn't rule out nuclear use against non-nuclear threats. And this was saying that any missile that goes into the United States or hit our infrastructure could have a nuclear response. Now Putin's thinking about changing theirs, which is already that way, but it's also only essential threats to Russia. So what could he be changing it to? Maybe to hit Ukraine, or maybe to hit other members that might be involved in the conflict, because he keeps accusing NATO. And he even says it here, Russian leader cites what he calls US preventive strike idea. Putin warned this week that the risk of nuclear conflict was rising. Russia always said a war with NATO would be a nuclear conflict. Speaking of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg today warned that the war in Ukraine could spiral into a wider conflict between the West and Russia. The head of NATO is concerned that the fighting in Ukraine could spin out of control and become a war between Russia and the transatlantic military alliance. If things go wrong, they can go horribly wrong. Also a hint to nuclear conflict, and also to the conflict getting out of control. He said there is no doubt that a full-fledged war is a possibility, adding that it was important to avoid conflict that involves more countries in Europe and becomes a full-fledged war in Europe, which it might be too late for that. Russia is pushing harder as the United States already readies more military aid for Kyiv. This will be $275 million in military aid. Don't forget they also got the bill on the table for the defense bill, which is going to be $800 million to Ukraine for military aid, and also $10 billion for Taiwan. Ukraine is now showing the ability to strike deep inside of Russia, meaning that they can now strike Russian territory, which they have been doing, but they haven't gone close to Moscow like they have been doing, which means it's really likely that Russia's serious about using nuclear weapons. We also just had an explosion at a shopping center in Russia that they're saying that mysteriously exploded. Now, someone said this started with a SIG, another person said that this started with an accident, and then another one said it was sabotage on the reports from Russia. The United States is also hinting at a buildup in the Indo-Pacific to deter an attack on Taiwan, as Russia has a ship loaded with missiles right near Norway, to the point that they had to send their navy to shadow the Russian ship. And Serbia and Kosovo is also starting to break off, as Serbia said today that they're thinking about sending troops into Kosovo, which Kosovo said would never happen again. I told people things were going to get worse, and they still ignored me and bashed me. But I got a lot of supporters. You tell me what happens next.